So, hi, I'm Don. Yes, so we're going to talk about OpenWhisk. My job is just a lot of talking and hand waving. I don't have to be that accurate. You're the developers, it's your problem. So we have Red Hat has a developer program. This is the advertising part of it. We have a developer program just like everyone else, like MSDN and all that stuff. Ours is open source. Everything is free, but we require email and password so we can spam message you. But you can seriously download like a copy of RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, that you can run in a VM or on your machine, and you can download Openshift, which I'm not demoing tonight, but I'm using it, and basically any of our products, and you can play around with them. When I say play, I mean you can use it as a developer. You can use them to develop and learn them. So if you're in a position where you're learning and you really want to step up your game, you might want to do that. You might not too. It might be too much. Are there any Red Hat customers in here? Doesn't matter. I don't really care. Or IBM customers, because that's Red Hat's IBM's our new daddy soon. CentOS. So Red Hat makes money by selling free software, right? Red Hat Enterprise Linux. That's Linux. We're the biggest. We did $3 billion a year, and we say we make money by selling free software because we sell support. There's a thing called CentOS, CENTOS. That is upstream of RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So that's the open source community one that everybody uses. So if you want to use RHEL and not have anything to do with Red Hat, you just use CentOS, because it's basically almost the same. So we're going to talk tonight about OpenWhisk, which is put out by the Apache Foundation, stop. Who in here is not familiar with how open source software works? It's okay if you raise your hand. You're all open source ease? Cool. So Apache Foundation does OpenWhisk. IBM, our new overlords soon, uses OpenWhisk as part of the Bluemix cloud that functions. So what you're seeing tonight is not just an open source solution, it is what IBM sells. So you could like go to work tomorrow and say, I know how to use OpenWhisk, it's open source. We don't do open source. IBM has said, oh, okay. It is serverless, which is one of my least favorite lying words in the world. And it can be hosted anywhere. By that I mean you can run OpenWhisk on premises. You can run it on your PC, as I'm known. You can run it on your servers on premises. You can run it in OpenStack. You can run it on a server on DigitalOcean. You can run it on Amazon. You can run it in Azure. You can run it in Google. You can run it anywhere. It just takes a server, even though it's serverless, it takes a serverless. So the vendor doesn't matter. You can run it anywhere, which is really cool. And especially on-premise, we find that that's our biggest like customer base or excitement is people don't want to run it on-prem. That's not me. I don't know why I have this slide. No, I'm very old. I started surfing at age 40 after waiting all my life. Went to the Outer Banks. You don't know what that is, do you? Went to North Carolina, took a surfing lesson, paddled out, wave came along, I jumped up, rode it the whole way in first try. The instructor mine was blown. He's like, we've never, literally never, no one's ever done that. You've surfed before. I'm like, no, I just have really good balance. And I was hooked. It's the greatest thing in the world. It's also been scientifically proven as one of the best treatments for PTSD. Yes, I know. What is the importance of this? If you don't try something, you don't know how great it might be. And so this is what serverless has done to the poor servers. Right? That's our servers now, since we're all serverless. And it's also cool. Serverless is very cool. That's that's my friend from 1976. He actually dressed like that every day. He got really tough really fast too. So what is serverless? Blah, 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 blah. I like the one that these slides are from a colleague at work with, so these are not mine, so I can be brutally honest and just brutal because it's fun. I do not require server management. Yeah. Sure. I mean, not from you, but you know what? A VM doesn't require management from me either. I just pay rack space and they do it. It's not my problem. I'm a developer. That's just how I look at hardware. I don't even change light bulbs. So, because the hardware problem. So this is the landscape of serverless. This is my favorite. Who cares? I mean, is this an appeal to authority or populism? Like, oh, look, everybody's using it. You know, it's so. Except for the fact that there's this thing called the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Here it is. And they're kind of like a big deal in cloud computing. Like they kind of, how do you say it? They kind of bless certain projects. Like this is good for cloud. And OpenWhisk is one of those blessed products. And also IBM does sell it, so you know it's going to be pretty decent. I don't think they'd sell terrible stuff. I almost laid some Yiddish on you there. This thing called Riff right here, it's reading is fundamental. No, that is, I think, our biggest competitor, Pivotal. That's their open source cloud solution. OpenFAAS, OpenFAS, that's another one. I'm just being honest, I don't know the other ones. Those two I do know because I think they're and OpenWhisk are like the big three. So in the interest of fairness and transparency, I want you to be aware of them. So there's people who are into it. People have said OpenWhisk is good. Okay, the good and the bad. I didn't make these slides, I swear these are reversed. Automatic scalability, yeah, okay. Automatic cost reduction. Anytime you see that, you should run. Okay, that's the sales man. That's the car sales equivalent of let me talk to my manager. Nothing's automatic. If it's, trust me, I could run up the bill real fast, just like my electric bill. Quicker and easier development, maybe. There are some things that are cool about it, maybe easier. Better capacity planning, I guess. Delivery speed, probably. The bad things, debugging. It's not really all there yet. Deployment and architectural complexity. I'm not sure that's that hard. Deep learning curve, that I totally don't agree with. I don't think it's deep at all. I think this is like really easy. Vendor lock-in, yes, that's the biggest problem. And then monitoring, that's getting better. It's like any new technology, it has to mature. But it's mature enough that people are using it. So I told you it's OpenWhisk. Is Apache. It supports all these languages. The next to the last one, Docker containers, that's supposed to be the one size fits all. The fact is, though, there are some limitations on that. For example, if you were here earlier, I was the .NET on Linux person. You cannot run .NET applications in OpenWhisk yet. And I'll explain, there's two things to that. And I wanted to make that you could. So the way OpenWhisk works is for every one of those languages, there's like a runtime component that someone wrote. And the PHP one, I think, is the most current one because their company wanted it, so they wrote it. I wanted to write the .NET one, but my boss was like, no, you can just use Docker containers. So I looked into it, and you can't because in a Docker container, you have to put the application at the directory app/ and then you have to call the executable exec. That's what it looks for in that instance. But you can't do that in .NET yet. Just so you know, one of the future things that's coming with .NET, if you're not familiar with .NET, you know how it is. You have to build a program, and then you have all these libraries that go with it. Well, the future .NET that's running in the labs and it's coming out, you'll be able to compile your program to one exe, just like in Go language. So you'll be able to write .NET code that runs on any machine. It's just an exe. When that happens, then you'll be able to do that with the Docker. But we're all about Node.js, and that's built in. And you can deploy it anywhere Docker can be run, and that includes Kubernetes and /OpenShift. OpenShift, if you're not familiar, is we have productized OpenShift. So I want to say it's a Red Hat product. There's an upstream called OKD. OpenShift is like Kubernetes on steroids. OpenShift gives you more power than it's on top of Kubernetes. I use it only because it's so much easier than using Kubernetes. So terminology so it's open source, right? So it's FAAS, functions as a service. So because it's open source, we can't call it a function, we have to call it an action, because that's how open source is. Let's just call it something else because we're special. So an action is a function. Or if you're like fancy, stateless code snippet, whatever. A package is a bundle of actions and feeds. I didn't make these slides. I would not have had these things slide in. So a feed is an interface, a trigger, an event. Let me just get all these out here. Oop. So basically, the thing you're going to look at tonight are actions. We're not going to do feeds and triggers, but think of it this way. A trigger is something that happens. We all know that. And then there's a rule, R-U-L-E, that looks at the trigger and says, hey, what should I do? Right? That's what the rule does. And then it triggers an action. So an activation is the output of an action. So that's all you need to know. Oh, by the way, it will go through the slides and then I'm going to demo. I forgot to mention that. So there's the tooling. The one I use is Whisk, the top one. It's the command line interface. Whisk deploy is, you can use, if you're not yet another markup language, YAML, you can make big complex configurations of actions and packages and feeds and triggers and all that in the YAML file, and then you use Whisk deploy just to use the file to deploy everything. And then the serverless framework, if you're not familiar with it, which I wasn't until I got into this, is where you can take like a high-level code and describe how you want your serverless functions to be, and then you take that high-level code and apply it to any cloud provider. In other words, you can describe your system and take that description and give it to Amazon's implementation of serverless framework, and it'll build it. And then you can do the same thing with Azure, and it'll build it. You can do the same thing with OpenWhisk, and it'll build it. So it's kind of a way around vendor lock-in. The downside is, like anything like that, is lowest common denominator, right? Anything is it's one size fits all. It doesn't fit any of them perfectly. That's just a fact of life. The invocation pattern, synchronous, asynchronous, and scheduled. So if you're familiar with cron jobs or you have jobs you want to run on a timely basis, that's the scheduled. The other two are self-explanatory. One you wait on, one you don't. We'll see all this. So I go through these kind of quick because I'm going to get the demo. How does it work? It uses Nginx. If you're not familiar with that, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And it talks to a controller and uses Kafka. If you're not familiar with that, it doesn't matter. But it's a streaming, what am I trying to say? It handles events and streams of data. And it writes to, anybody recognize that symbol? Couch, right, couch, DB, couch. It's a couch, see? So when you call a function, it records everything, and then it says to the invoker, hey, run this function, action. See, they had to name it action, right? Make it confusing. So it runs the action in a Docker container, actually a Kubernetes pod. Well, this is the pod, I'm sorry. It runs the function, goes back up to Kafka, and stores the results. So that's how it works. It doesn't matter except for, I'll switch over and show you something later, and that's pretty cool. So we have demo action. I'm going to show you a web action and chaining. I'm not going to do events, and I'll come back to this. Let's get out of that. Let's get to the command line. So I do not, okay. A couple of things. This tutorial is based on one that our colleagues wrote in Java. So I took it and did Node, and then I made it better. But I haven't posted it on the Red Hat repository yet. Because I just like, this is a work that's almost finished. The talk is done, just the writing. So I just picked a theme from, if you're familiar with Jekyll and GitHub pages, so I just kind of picked this up. So if you can see at the top, and I'll put it later, that's where it is now. If you want to grab this and use it on your own. And I'll get to, at the end, I'll circle back to like how we stay connected. But this is what we're going to do. So I want to kind of scroll through this and talk until I get to the action, the fun part. So prerequisites. You can install OpenWhisk on your PC. You don't need to use like Openshift like I am. You can install it on your own. When you do that, I did it on my PC. It took about 30 minutes. It downloads a bunch of stuff and builds it. Once it's done, it's fine. when you do it this way, it takes like 5 minutes. So we have this thing called Minishift, which is, if you're familiar with Kubernetes, there's a Minikube, which is kind of a virtual machine that runs Kubernetes. Minishift is a virtual machine that runs Openshift, and it's free. Docker, you're probably familiar with, that runs containers. You need the Kubernetes command line, although I don't remember using it. I'm not sure you do. You need the Openshift command line tool. You need the whisk for that, and the Git, of course, to pull this down. And I say here that you need NPM, but I'm not sure that you do. And then if you want to, there's a tool called Watch. If you're in a Macintosh, you don't need it. I should have that as optional. So you start Minishift, blah, 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 blah. You set up your environment, and then you get to this. You have a new project. I called it FOZ, and I'll just go to this and show you. This is where it starts to get interesting. This is the OpenShift console. And the reason I'm showing you this is because earlier I talked about all the parts of OpenWhisk, and here they are running in OpenShift. So these are, it uses Docker and Kubernetes, and the way it works is it scales up and down, blah, blah, blah. But you can see, like remember the invoker? Here's some Strimzy open. So running OpenWhisk on OpenShift is a project called Strimzy, because we're open source, we've got to have a goofy name. So that's not part of OpenWhisk. That's just for OpenWhisk on OpenShift. There's the invoker, CouchDB, the controller, Nginx, and the alarm provider. I think that works with time jobs, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to show you that there is actually, those things are actually running on this PC. This Mac is 16 gigs. I have 8 dedicated to this and 3 CPUs. Obviously, if you ran it on a server, it'd be a lot faster. This talk is not, none of my talks are polished. I don't want them to be. I don't want to just stand up here and be like the ShamWow guy. I want to actually talk to you about how stuff works. So this color scheme's horrible for this demo. I just realized that. But it's okay because I'm going to type this stuff. But I'm going to configure the OpenWhisk tool. I did that. The cooking show. I've already done all that. So let's do the first action. Let's get to the good stuff. So do I have whisk ready? No, I don't. So first I have to set my path to point to where I have the whisk command line tool, which of course is still in downloads. So there's the whisk command line tool. WSK gives you all the help. So let me show you this. If I do an action list, here are the actions that I have on my system right now in this instance of OpenWhisk. Here's one, split upper sort. Here's hello web, uppercase, splitter, greeter. A lot of these are ones that we're going to create later, so I probably should have deleted them, but it's okay. So the first thing I can do is go into hello OpenWhisk. So basically what I'm doing is going to now go through the tutorial I've written, kind of go through it with you guys online. So first thing I'm going to do is look at the code. And if you see that, it's real simple. All it does is return, welcome to OpenWhisk on OpenShift. That's it. That's all it does. You have to have a function main. That's what it looks for. And it always works with JSON, input and output. This one has no input, just output. So to create an action, remember the steep learning curve? So the tool is whisk. I have to use -I because on my OpenShift instance, I'm using a self-signed certificate, which is not secure. So by using -I, I'm telling the tool, I realize this is an insecure connection. I mean, I can use this. So I have an action I want to create, and I'm going to call it hello OpenWhisk, and I'm going to use the input the JS. Oops, I screwed up. Now I created one called Open. That's what I wanted. I mean, the first one worked, right? But that's not the name I wanted. So the first thing I want to show you is the name of the function does not have to equal the name of the source code. It seems rather obvious, but it's important to know. That'd be a really good way to screw things up. It's just name them whatever, and that would be a good way to confuse everyone. So now if I do a whisk list, I should see hello OpenWhisk, and in fact, hello OpenWhisk.js. There they are. I didn't want that, but there's at the top. So now I have that action created on the source code. So now what I do is I can do this. I can invoke it, invoke an action, and which one? Hello OpenWhisk. And then I can do result, which is going to run it synchronously. So I'm going to wait and get just the result back. What did I do wrong? Oh. Action invoke. So there it is. Now you saw the delay, how long it took, but when you run it subsequent times, it pretty much just happens at computer speed, let's just say. So that source code I had, what's doing is, remember, it's going through the whole Nginx to the controller, to Kafka, to CouchDB. It's running the function, and then when it goes back up to Kafka, it says, hey, I want the result now. So it's going out to CouchDB, getting the result, and bringing it back. The first time you invoke it, there's a little startup time. That invoker then will stay alive for 5 minutes, which is you can configure that, but it defaults to 5 minutes. So anytime within 5 minutes, if you call it again, it's pretty much instant because it's running. After that, it goes back to sleep. It doesn't go away, but it takes a little bit of time to invoke it again. There's a tool not a tool, there's a framework from Google called Knative. Have you heard of that? Well, Knative is the part of this demo I don't have yet. Knative is just kind of I don't know, it's a framework for running applications in the cloud that has many improvements. So OpenWhisk will run on top of Knative. And one of the things Knative will do is this thing called scale to zero. So if you work with Docker at all or Kubernetes, you scale up and down, typically like 1, 2, 3, 100, back down to 1. Knative allows you to scale to 0, which says just don't do anything. But it kind of keeps track of that. It's not dead, it's just not running, if that makes sense. And that frees up CPU cycles and memory. So that's a very important thing. That'll come into play later when you get into this. When you add Knative, that'll just be an improvement. There's no downside to it. So that's how you create an action. That's that simple. Now, of course, there's more to it. But I can do this. I can change it. And I'm using code because it's a great editor. Version 2. And I'll save that. Get out of here. Action update. It's just that easy. Hello, Openshift. And it's really, really good when you can open Whisk, when you can type. Now if I call it, I should get the new results. And I did. So that's how you do an action, a function. By the way, it's serverless, but the first thing you have to do is install it on a server. I love that. And then that's how you update one. So if that's all you did, you've already gotten into it. But wait, there's more. I can invoke it this way without getting the result back. This is asynchronous. And what you get back is an activation ID. Remember the terminology last one was activation, the result of an action? It's always an activation. It's just that when you say result, you get just the result. And you'll see what I mean by just the result. So I have this ID. So now I can use that, I'll bet, and get the activation. I'm going to try that and see if it works. Do you think it will? Do you think I know it does? So I have an activation get. So by doing it asynchronously, obviously it's faster. And then by specifying not just the result. If you look in there, you'll see result about a third of the way down. But this is all the JSON you get back from one action. I was going to say function. So we had the payload, but you can see there's there's limits of memory, there's a path to where it is, so you can, I'm just doing everything in whisk.system because it's a demo, but you can namespace everything, of course, which you would do in production. So look, it recognizes it's a Node.js 6 application. That's what kind of application it is. So there's all this great stuff you can see. And if you are debugging and you do console log, that shows up under logs, which is I found very helpful, except for like when you're doing Node and with the callbacks, sequencing isn't always what you want, but in any event. So we did a result, now we have an activation. You can see that there's a lot more information they can get back. So this is where one of the downsides is there's no monitoring. This is what people are starting to invest effort in, to monitor, because you have all this information, let's use it. So that's how you create an action. And we updated one, and now we can delete it. And you probably could guess how to do that, I bet, by now. So what was it? Hello, open whisk, and it's deleted, action list, and it's not there. Now the first one is not the same one, it's a different name. So that's how you delete them. So basic stuff. Moving right along. Any questions so far? Okay, well, so let's look at handling parameters. And this one we're going to take an input JSON document of cat, blurg, apple, and toothbrush, and we're going to return those words split on a comma, basically, into an array. So that's what this one will do. So we get to see how we handle input, because you're going to have, right? You're going to have one input. I mean, that just makes sense mostly. So that one is sequence demo, and that's a splitter. So this is the code. As you can see, it's very complicated Node.js here, where it splits it on the comma and returns it as the result. But you can see the main function main takes arguments, right? An arguments object, which we know is going to be a JSON document. And the args.text is the key, right? You have to know that, because if you call it with something else, it won't work. So let's create that one. It may already be out there, just because running through this at home, action create splitter. Yeah, it's already there. That's okay. But now let's call it, and I'll show you how that works. So, I did too fast. But the line action invoke splitter -r was the short for remember result, -r is short for that. But then you list your parameters. So text, remember in the code was .text. That's the text. And then the string, comma delimited words, and it returned exactly what we expected, an array. So that's how it's that simple to handle parameters. You expect a JSON document in, you get JSON back. The cool thing is the next thing is where you start chaining them together. So the output of one becomes the input of the next. That's where you start to get some power. There are people who will argue that, so are you familiar with microservices? You've heard that phrase. I just did a talk recently called Let's Kill the Microservices Hype. And Red Hat's all about microservices, so that went over real well. But it's not for everybody. But one of the things in microservices is writing really small services, microservices. There are people all over, some inside of Red Hat, that will argue that all microservices should be just written as functions. I mean, there are people, and their argument is, why not? So it's like anything else. Why not? You know what the best argument is for using functions, I think? This is going to sound silly. Because it's like how do you know when to use them? It's really, there is no like cut and dried Well, if this is this, then if this situation, you should use a function. Because there's a lot of you get. I think Azure gives you like 1 million free function calls every month or something, or I don't know. But they can add up really quickly. And then from what I heard, I don't know this, but the way the function world works, like anywhere, like IBM, Azure, Amazon, I don't know this. This is what I've been told, is that it's like dirt cheap, and then it hits a point where it goes choomp like that. I don't know that. But it's really hard to know when to use some technology. This is going to sound crazy, but a good argument in favor of it is talent acquisition. Hear me out. If you're using the latest and greatest technology, you'll probably get the latest and greatest developers. It's just a fact of life. Let's just face it. If you're a manager of a company and you have developers and you want to get real hot shots, what are you going to dangle in front of them? Like, hey, you want to come write some PHP, or do you want to come work with like functions and microservices and Docker and Kubernetes? I'm just saying. So, and I'm not saying that's the only reason, but that should weigh into it. I mean, it has to. Unfortunately, it's a fact of life. Developers, we all want to work on the latest, hottest thing, and this is latest, hottest thing. The cool thing about this is once you learn these concepts with OpenWhisk, if you go to work with Lambda functions in Amazon or Azure functions, excuse me, you'll know all the what am I trying to say? The characteristics. Like you'll be, oh yeah, that's the same as such and such in OpenWhisk. All right, so now we're gonna take another action that's gonna turn everything to uppercase. So I creatively called it uppercase. So I'm gonna create this one. Oh, let's look at it.
Can you email us the file or the folder?
Can email you the folder.
Is it just the file that's in there, or is it like
you said LS. Excuse me. I thought you said email us. Yeah.
You could email it now.
Well, you will get it. Yeah. Hang on. Yeah, something caught my throat. I apologize. Basically, yeah, it is the file. The other, ignore the other things. Remember I told you I copied this from a Java thing? I forgot to delete the Java artifacts. So the first three have nothing to do with this. It's Java. Anybody here ever do Java? Well, then that's just the start of it, because then it just goes on and on and on down the tree. No, the first three have nothing to do. It's just the last one. So it is just the file, in theory. I didn't even notice it. I'm glad you said something. So looking at the file, it just takes every word and runs to uppercase. Pretty simple. So but see, the input is args and the output is results. And it's looking for args.result. So remember the previous one, the input was text, but the output was result. Well, that's the input to this one, so we have to make sure we're using the same JSON. So that's where you get a little, you have to think. That's what this always crosses me up. Get it? Because you have to think. Tough crowd. So I'm going to create uppercase, and it's probably already there. Yeah, it's already there. Doesn't hurt to try it again. And then I did this. I have one here called, I thought I had a split upper. I split upper sort, but I don't have split upper. Okay, well that's cool. That's good. So I have created upper. I can test it by sending in a string. So the slashes are because it's escaping characters and a blah blah, right? But I sent in an array of words and got back the result. I used the result as I have to. So in other words, this matches the output from the previous one that we expected, that we tested, and we got the results we wanted. There's a bug in this, or not a bug, there's a defect in this. And on the website, I just mentioned it, say, hey, it's up to you to fix it. it's that. If you put any, it doesn't trim any spaces off. So I'll leave that for Node developers to actually do. But the point is, when we have this one now, so we should be able to create a sequence. Should I do this, or should I go on to the third one? I'm just going to go to the third one, and then it'll make sense when I get there. See, I could create a sequence right now of those two, right, out of the one into the other. But I'm going to create the third one and then just link all three of them together, and you'll see it. So now there's a sorter, and that's just the file. Thank you. And all it does is sort the input. The output from the last one was called result. So it's going to take result and sort it. Oh, forget that comment. That's incorrect. I accept pull requests. So I should be able to create this, and I'm sure it's already here because I did it. But that's okay. So now what you would do is you would test that. I could just jump ahead to the result, but let's test it. So did it sort them? Yes, it did. They were cat blurg apple toothbrush became apple blurg cat toothbrush. So we know it works. For our very simple test that you make sure, right? You always try to test it. You make sure it passes. You say it works. It's like, well, let me test. No, it works. Just stop. So now we can create the sequence, which is going to take 1, 2, and 3. So here's the actual command, if you can see it up at the top, and if not, I'll type it. And this is where you'll be doing this. If you get into Openshift, you'll be doing this. Create, and I'm going to call it split upper sort. And it's a sequence, and then you just list the ones in order. Splitter, uppercase, sorter. Now, is that a comma? Yeah. I think I did that one before. Yeah. But that's how you create it. So now, I chained them together. And now I can invoke it, which is just the same as the other ones, the name and the parameters. And there it is. So that's when 3 of them chained together. Took the sentence, remember from the very first one? The sentence, you know what I mean. It split them apart, it uppercased them, and sorted them. So there's how you chain sequences together. And again, one of the things I didn't steal yet from the other demo is events. You can tie these to events that fire. There's a whole thing called web events that this consortium is working on, like standardized events in the web. But I'll get to something else too that I think is even better. Or not better, but I'll show you. Let's bring this home now. So up to this point, we've been using command line tools. Well, that's great for building and testing stuff, but that's not real world. You're going to sit there at your desk, and every time someone does something on your website, you're going to type a command line. No, you're going to probably have your code invoke it typically through a RESTful interface, right? Why don't you have your code, maybe your React code calls action. I want to call them functions. So that's what a web action is. And it's stupid easy to do. If you can see the lousy purple. Of all the themes I picked the worst one for demos. And that makes it better. Well, I'll type it. Let me get to the directory. What is it? Hello web. So there it is. One file. So all this thing does is you give it arguments and it sends them back. It just does a round trip just to show you that it works. But I want to make it into a web service. So here's how crazy easy it is. Action create, hello web, use hello web, I think it's web equals true. Yeah, web true. Come on, I'm typing. Good, it already exists. Terrific. But the point is, to create a web action, all you have to do is add that -- web equals true to the end. That's all you have to do. And now it's a RESTful interface. You don't have to add any libraries to your code. You don't have to write any code for handling. Right? There is no routing because it's one function. That's the nature of one action. That's the nature of serverless function as a server. Is it's one thing. So you don't do routing. If you do routing, you would create another action. Seriously. You can still test it, even though you made it a web action. You can still test it from the command line, which I just did. I invoked it with the parameter text hello web, and I got back text hello web. So whatever you send it, it's going to send back. So now it's a web thing. Now it's running on my local PC, right? It's not running up in a web somewhere. But this is pretty cool, and I'll show you. What did I do wrong? Oh. What am I doing wrong? I don't get this. Did I miss something? Oh, okay, I see what I did wrong. I'm copying and pasting from and I don't have I have too many quotes. Isn't it export? Linux people? Huh? What? I'm missing a quote. That looks right, doesn't it? Wait, that's the wrong one. But it's not working. Whisk-i action get hello web URL. Now this is funny. I've been doing this several times. Whisk-i action get hello web URL. Well, I'll fix it. But what I did was, when I created the web action, it created it in my Openshift instance. Right? So if you were doing this on your server on premises or wherever, it would have a URL to it. We use this. Openshift uses this nip.io. If you're not familiar with that, it kind of reroutes back to itself. It's a good way to get a URL from a local machine that looks like a URL instead of just an IP address, but it includes the IP address. Anyway, this is the URL to my URI, to my web service, except for it won't work because it has to have .json on the end. So what I'm trying to do is set web URL. Do I need to that? .json. Okay, now I should be able to echo $web URL. Okay, so finally I got that set up. I don't know what's wrong with the other line. I'll get that fixed. Now I have this ridiculously simple web application that uses React. And one of the ways you do React, you can send a local environment variable, I found out, was do this. Any React people see that? So, right? So in other words, I'm why is this not working? Oh, wait. Yeah, I forgot to delete. I deleted the node_modules folder because I checked it into GitHub, and I was too lazy to write a git ignore, so I just I wasn't lazy. It was like last night. And I was like, I'm just gonna check this in. So, all that. Now it should run, right? Tell me, someone. So this is my first React application, and I'm a developer, not a designer, so I'm really proud of how. Look, is that beautiful? So you can just type here, and if it works right, what it's going to do, it's going to call that web function, which returns what? Whatever you put in. So it should submit there. So there's how you do. Yes. Yes. Great. The demo gods. I must have gotten the URL wrong. Wait. Echo $web URL. Looks good to me. Yeah. Let's try that again. Yeah. Let's try it again. Isn't that a typical developer thing? Well, I'll try it again. I didn't change anything. Now mysteriously it's going to work. It's not going to. And I've been shouldn't it be local? Is it localhost 3000? I thought it was 4000. What's that? It's 3000. I work so many different things I get confused. What is that? Command Alt J or something? Or yeah. Div cannot appear as a descendant of P. Well, what should I do? I don't know why this has not happened before, but hang on. Oops. Cat app.js. There we go. Here's where it calls the, well, there's where it gets the URI. Say again? The render form.
So yeah, right there you have your out there. So we have P. Sorry, it's at the bottom.
Yeah. Well, that
Right there, header, you have P div P. You can't do that. Try and make it. You got div P div.
What? P div. There's a close.
No. You have a div inside of a P tag.
You can't do that.
Can't do that.
But I thought I had it working.
If you switch those tags, div to P, div, that should work.
I can't type. Okay, I believe you. And you know what? This is good. This is teamwork. We're going to do this, team. This is. I told you it's not scripted. This is real. How real could it be? So I can't. So just like get rid of that.
Just remove it.
Just.
Yeah, just remove those.
And then also like 30
Thank you. Yes, thank you for giving the name. You know what? I had this working. Seriously, I would not have just put this. I mean, it did. I don't either. I don't think that was it. I think it was something even like really dumber. Wait, I got it. That's not what I wanted. That's not. No, that's not. Because I don't have the URL in there, right? You get the network. So it's the problem is, I think the URL is incorrect. Get Control C. React app web URL equals $web URL npm start. That should use the web URL as the environment variable in here, which is called React app web URL. I have a feeling that it's not, that I had the wrong web URL. Yeah, it's got, that's what it is. It has to be. What is it? Control J. Oh, this is a certificate authority. Okay. So remember I told you it's self-signed certificate? I had this, how I fixed this was, because it's a real pain to get Google Chrome to do it and everything. So what I did, this is bringing back memories. No, because I did this at home. What is it? Export? Okay. $web URL. Is what I did was I kind of do the low tech way to do it. Oh, come on. That. And then do this. Hey, it works for me, man. Seriously, I'm very pragmatic about this stuff. So this is something I have to address for my my tutorial. Like, how do you get around this problem? Now it should work, and I should say, "Hello, world." Booyah! Take that, Chrome. So there you go. So the point of all this craziness was that it's that easy to make a restful web interface from an OpenWhisk action. Remember the start of all this craziness was -- web equals true. That's all you have to do. You don't have to add any libraries to your code at all, because it's running Nginx. It takes care of all that. You have a URI, you call it, you pass some JSON in, and I did a round trip. Big deal. Now the final thing I want to talk about, and this was, I'm so relieved that it's working. Now that unless you've never done a presentation, that's like the worst feeling in the world. It's like, why isn't it working? I know it works. Now I'm trying to find my tutorial. So the final thing I don't have in my tutorial yet, I was giving this talk at Pi, Ohio, which is in Ohio, and the guy said, how do you include like dependencies in your code? I was like, I don't know. So I got looking into it, and here's one that does that. This is called HelloDB, and it uses MySQL, and what it does is you pass in like a name, and it'll return back, say, hello, Sally. But if the name is in a MySQL database, it'll return a special greeting. And it's hard doing demos. You have to try to be creative and come up with something. So I've gone ahead and created a database. We call that cooking show, where you have something already prepped. Over here, running in Openshift, a MySQL database. Which, by the way, it's one line to do that. It's OC create. OC is OpenShift command line. OC create MySQL and some parameters, and boom, within about 5 seconds, you have a MySQL database. Now, you don't want to run a database like this in production because it's in a container, and containers are ephemeral. When it goes away, you lose everything. There is a MySQL high availability option that you can run in containers, but this is not that. The point is, I have a MySQL database, and I've already gone ahead and populated it, and I will show you that. So let me go. Ooh, look at that. I don't like that. Original. There it is. Okay. Solutions. There's a HelloDB. Code README. So this is my original attempt at this. Anyway, so look at this. Here's how this has nothing to do with OpenWhisk. I just think it's cool. Here's how an OpenShift, which again, we sell, but you can also get for free. So I'm not selling you. Here's how you, up at the top, create the SQL database. You need to do a Docker pull, but if you work with Docker, you don't have to do a Docker pull, right? It'll pull it if it's not found. So new app, and you can see, so I set up a password of my user. It's very secure. Database is MyDB. And then I have create the table, which is an OC exec, which in OpenShift it will execute whatever command, and then there's some awk stuff to get the name of the container. I populate database and I prove its contents. So if I run that one, prove the contents, it's going to run a select star from the database name, but it's running inside of a pod inside of OpenShift, inside a virtual machine on my machine. So I did a, can you see that? Yeah, you can. So I did a select star basically from personal greeting, and I got my name and howdy, which means if you use my name in this application, you should get back howdy. Any other name you shouldn't. So that was easy. Now let me get back to where I was. Nope. Hello, DB. Now, the thing is, when you want to install, what's missing? Well, it doesn't matter. When you want to use in Node dependencies, what's that? Yeah, but when you want to use dependencies, you have to install them. So you do an npm install -- production, so you don't get development. I have you know what, this one's too small. Now I have to back up. And I'm really bad at remembering folders. Like already, FA, solutions, hello DB. Yes. First try. I'm buying a lottery ticket tonight. So I have a cat. I want to show you this rebuild and explain how you do. So the way you do this, get to the point, Don. People want to go home. When you want to use dependencies, what you do is you take your source and the dependencies and you zip them up into a zip file. And then when you create the action, you have to tell it what kind it is. Remember earlier in the activation it said kind Node.js 6? Because it just deduced that. It said, hey, it's Node 6, okay, whatever. In this case, you have to tell it, because who knows what's in your zip file? It can't look in your zip file and go, oh, it might be a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to tell it it's a Node.js in the zip file. And it's going to take the contents of the zip file and create this giant action. By the way, the limit on action is 48 megabytes. If you create action that big, so there's the other thing. When you work with containers and microservices, like you might create a microservice that might be 200 megs. I saw a Windows container that was 10 gigabytes because it was running a website using IIS. It was kind of funny, like 10 gigabytes, but it's not a VM. But so you're limited to 48 megs, which is like fine. Although with Node modules, who knows? This one comes at 8 megs for this. But that's how you do it. And so I just created this rebuild script to rebuild it, because if you're like me, when you build stuff, you test it over and over and over. I script everything. I script everything. In fact, if you see, I have the DB setup, scripted, and so on. So rebuild doesn't do the. Is that right? Okay. So I should be able to do rebuild. Right, so it's already there. So great. No, yeah, so it tried to delete it and it wasn't there. So the rebuild deletes it and rebuilds it. So I have this hello DB that I should be able to check now. I don't remember how to call it. I have to look. Here it is. Okay. So this is the one that's going to go to the database. So if I run it like that for Sally, I should get hello Sally. And if I do it for Sam, I get hello Sam. And if I do it for Don, I should get howdy Don. Yeah. So it talks to the database. So in this particular example of using the database, which is key to how to use dependencies, I have not put into my repo yet. I do have the instructions. They were in a different repo. I'll do that like tomorrow. So the point is you can go and get all this stuff and do it yourself. So even if you didn't pay attention tonight, just came for the pizza, you can still get this. Although if you came out here just for Pizza Hut pizza, I feel bad for you. So that's how you do dependencies. That's a big deal because now you're like, hey, I can do anything, right? I mean, that was a big deal. You don't have to run npm install inside or like outside and create the node modules. There's a way to do it where it automatically, the first time you invoke it, it'll do that. I haven't done that. Somebody at IBM wrote a utility to do that. I saw it. I was like, hey, that's cool, and then didn't do anything with it. If you go on the interwebs and search for OpenWhisk, probably 9 out of 10 things are going to come up IBM because they use, this is in production, this is what they use. If you go to IBM and say, I want to do cloud functions, this is what you get. So someone asked me one time, is anybody using it in production? I'm like, yeah, IBM is, and their customers. So this is like a legit thing. It's not going to go away. It's not risky, I don't think. I mean, hopefully IBM doesn't just sell stuff that's no good. They've been known to buy companies that are questionable. I'm joking. Red Hat's great. It really is. I think that's all I have. And I'm saying that because that's it. We've created actions. We've done them from the command line. We sequenced them together. We did a web event. We did dependencies. We didn't do events. I just don't have that in here yet. But you can tie events. Again, if your Google Kung Fu is strong, you'll have no problem with this. And I will show you the URL. And all that. What are your questions? Anyone? Again, a couple of things you can. Well, talk is cheap. Let's do it. That's not what I want. Let's look at the URL. That's not it. Well, you don't want that. It's GitHub. So if you really want to get this, you can get your FAS tutorial Node.js. In fact, and then there's this one. Is it GitHub.io? Anyone? Thank you. I can never remember. In fact, let me just do something here. Well, let me just do something. I already have it. Right there it is. I will fix this ugly formatting. This was like not ready for production yet, but I have the information. I want to get out there. So I have it in 2 different places. I'll merge it like tomorrow and get up here. So, but if you go to those URLs, you will be able to get this. You can download it. You can run it yourself. All of these are links that will take you to the proper things that you need. So it's all here free. Yes, question?
So the Docker and Kubernetes dependencies there, are they, you run those inside of Openshift? Or do you run those locally?
Here's the thing. They do run inside of OpenShift. You'll use the Docker command line tool. However, you don't have to use the Docker command line tool. Like with my example that used the database, I did the Docker pool, right? But if I wasn't doing that example, I wouldn't even need Docker. So because it's built into Minishift. And the kubectl or kube control, however you want to say it, the command line tool, I don't remember seeing it anywhere in my demo. I think the guys in the Java demo have it, and I may have borrowed that part of it. So they may. So I need to fine tune it. I mean, if you install it and you don't use it, yeah, you're welcome. I gave you something. But yeah, it's there, ready to be used. Any other questions? Does anyone in here think they might play around with this? Okay, here there's a couple of things. One of the things that we see at Red Hat is a lot of companies are using this for on-premises. Like they love it. They're like, we can do functions without having to go to Amazon or Azure or anybody. We can just do it in-house. We have a server room. We have, we have racks of servers, whatever, or we are leasing servers, but we can load it on our stuff and we can control it. We're finding a lot of companies like that. And it's a transferable skill if you went to IBM, and then if you went through that what is it? I can't remember what it's called. The Cloud Serverless Foundation, whatever, the open standard they have, you could still use your skill set. And you get all the properties, the characteristics, so you're learning cloud. Yes?
One of the benefits I'm seeing that you use this for, especially like an on-premise sort of thing, I used to work with white under contacts. They can't use stuff like Lambda because it is not HIPAA compliant. And I'm curious if running this on their internal network stuff would actually be HIPAA compliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why not? It's internal. Yep. Yeah, that HIPAA is a big deal. I worked at pharmaceuticals for 9 years, and that was the biggest thing. It's like, it has to be HIPAA compliant.
Right. So it seems like this is a good option for them.
Yeah, it is. The only thing that I don't understand is, let's say you decided, like, I'm just going to, whatever, lack of a better term, I'm going to rent a server somewhere, let's say at Rackspace, because I work there. So I'm going to rent a Linux server and load this on there and run it, right? Because you could do that. And you'd have an endpoint, you could load your stuff up there, and everything's good. But I don't know how that would, I don't know if that would save you money. Like I can't stand here and say that's the cheapest way to do it. You have to think about it and study it and work at it, because if you're paying, say, $400 a month for a server, is that cheaper than just paying someone for functions? Because if you say, well, it is if you do a lot. Is it? Because if you do a lot, maybe that server is not big enough. You see what I'm saying? So then you need a bigger server. Say, well, oh no, we're not maxing out the server. Well, then you're paying for more capacity than you're using. The whole idea of functions is you only pay, like if you're buying it from Microsoft, you're only paying every time you use it. You're not paying for the server to run 24/7 and do nothing. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you can't walk out and say, oh, it's cheaper. You have to really study it and think about it. I don't want to give you the wrong impression that, oh, this is cheaper. It might be, I don't know. It depends on your situation and what you're doing with it. That's just a general rule of life, right? For anything, you have to study it. But it's real easy to get caught up in the hype. It's like, man, this is great. And it might not be cheaper. That's all I'm saying. Or it might be. It might be way cheaper. But I would really, really encourage you to, one, sign up for our developer program. It's just, we have books on this stuff. We have so much information. But you have to sign up for the spam, email, newsletter. You can opt out of it. And so I would encourage that. And I would really encourage you to play around with this. I mean, it costs you nothing, seriously. Anyone else? So my Node.js code, I mentioned this earlier, that code app, I know it's index, isn't it? This is the code that someone at work said, well, that's not really good code for a function because you're connecting every time. So this will all be up on the repo. And I think what I want to do is create a connection pool, but I don't know enough Node.js to be sure. And then you max out at 200 or something with MySQL, and you're going to hit your max. So you have to understand, when you work at a company like Red Hat where all these engineers, as soon as you show code, it's like attack mode. Here's what's wrong with it. Blah, 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 blah. And like, God, I'm just doing a demo, but thank you. So, no, but that's what you want. I mean, you want people that, because they're writing operating systems, so they're like every little thing. So if this is up there, and if you're so inclined to do a pull request, that would be awesome. All right, that's it. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. I'm done.